Let's talk about light. Again, I talk about light a lot in my videos, but that's just because in photography and videography, light is one of the most important things. Without light, there's no photo or video. You can make videos without sound, even without a story, but not without light. And today, I want to talk about one of the most important things you'll have to learn as a beginner filmmaker. The thing about light is that it does two things. It makes your videos look more professional. Your videos can be badly lit or well lit. But, and this is just as important, you can also get creative with light. Create your own style. So that's the next level. Go from a well-lit image to a creatively lit image. A nice looking image, because just because it's well exposed doesn't mean that it looks good. That's the first thing you should realize. So pause the video for a minute and think about that. Okay, here you can see the different jumps in lighting that I took from all the way in the beginning of my channel to right now. Now, of course, it's also subjective. Some of you might not like this look right now. Maybe you prefer something very bright with a lot of white. But that's fine too, and that's what I mean by creating your own style. So, first you have to learn how to light well, and then when you get the hang of that, you have to learn how to light creatively. Now, the key to creative lighting is figuring out the intricate relationship between settings, exposure, and light ratios within the scene, and how all of that works together. So let's just do that. Okay guys, so again, this is one of the most difficult things you'll have to learn as a beginner filmmaker. I'll try to explain everything, but I might fry my own brain, so if everything goes black at some point, I apologize. Let's do it step by step. Okay, so first, exposure. If you shoot a scene outside, for example, there are a lot of different camera settings that will work to get a well-exposed image. But for every camera setting, the image will look different. Sometimes slightly different, sometimes not so slightly. Using aperture 1.8 looks different compared to using 9, for example, but both of these images are perfectly exposed. And it's the same here in my studio, but when you add light to a scene, you also add the settings of that light into the mix. In here, I can get a correct exposure by adjusting not only the camera settings, but also by increasing or decreasing the output of the light. For example, I'm shooting this now at aperture 2.8, but I could just as well shoot this whole scene, this video, at aperture 5.6. Let's try that. Okay, so there we go, and then to get the right exposure, I'll just increase the output of my key light. Something like this, I guess, and then also the output of the light in the background. Okay, so something like this, I guess. It's not perfect, I think, but you get the idea, right? Now, the thing you have to remember is that all these different combinations of settings to get a well-exposed image all look a little bit different. But that's how exposure and settings work. Let's go back to 2.8. There we go. Okay, so a perfectly exposed image just means that there are no areas within your image that are too bright or too dark. But what the image looks like is actually not that important. Also remember that it's not always possible to get a perfectly exposed image without blown out highlights or crushed blacks. You should always try, but it's not always possible. But the most important thing you have to remember here is that a perfectly exposed image doesn't mean it's a nice looking image, especially when you're working with lights. Okay, let's get creative now. When you add light to a scene, you also have to pay attention to ratios, and light ratios is not the same as exposure. For example, I can leave all the camera settings as they are right now and increase the output of that blue light in the background without overexposing the image. Let's do that. So what I did now is change the light ratio between the background and the foreground. I added more light in the background without compensating here in the foreground. But this image is also well exposed. Some of you might like it even better. And the same goes for my face, for example. I could add some more light on this side of my face, like this, to change the ratio between light and dark on my face. But the camera settings stay the same, exactly the same. Now, usually I do like a little bit of shadow on one side of the face because it creates some interest, some depth. But this is mostly personal preference, you know? And before, a well-exposed image is not necessarily personal preference. You know what I mean? I hope it makes sense, because if you're a beginner, then yeah, it could be really difficult to understand. Now, while the light in someone's face might be personal preference, mostly, the background, I have a rule of thumb, or there is a rule of thumb. Unless it's a backlit image, always try to have the background a little bit darker than the foreground. Especially in a video like this with a person as the subject. Okay, let's go back to where we started. So it's really important to realize that when you work with lights, there's not just one way to perfectly expose an image. The possibilities are actually limitless, and it's really important that you practice and experiment. What I used to do is find a video on YouTube with lighting that I like and then try to copy it, because then you're forcing yourself to think about lights and settings and what do they do. Should I change the settings or the light output to create that look? Is it the light ratio or is it my exposure? Why doesn't my setup look the same? And the key to creative lighting is to combine all of the above. So camera settings, exposure, and light ratios. And even the position and angle of the lights. Okay guys, and to finish, a few bonus tips. So a lot of times we're looking for that soft light because soft light looks really good, right? Now a lot of beginners think that just diffusing the light with some kind of material will get you that soft look. And some of you might even think that if you put the light farther away, it will look softer. Well, I'll tell you that it's quite the opposite. To get the nicest, softest light, the bigger the better and the closer the better. That's why I have a 120 centimeter softbox and I put it as close as I can. It's right here, right outside the frame. That way, all that soft light wraps around my face nicely. I also have an LED panel that's diffused. Let me get it. Okay, so let me turn the key light off here. Now, this light is also diffused. You can't see it. It's the same kind of material that diffuses the light. But this will never look as soft as the big one here. No matter if I put it farther away or closer, it will always look harsh, even though it's diffused. And that's just because of the size, because it's too small. If this would be 10 times the size, then it would look more like the big one here. Okay, let's turn this back on. Okay, and also, if I would put the big key light here farther away, it wouldn't look as nice and soft, just because I'm putting it farther away and it gets smaller then. So a big light source, a big softbox, as close as possible, will give you the nicest, softest looking light. Size of the light source is just as important as diffusing it. And the second bonus tip, always try to have catch lights in your subject's eyes. Do you see these white spots in my eyes? I don't know if you can see them. You probably can, but again, the bigger your light source is, the bigger these spots in my eyes are. And it looks really nice because it makes your subject look alive and not like a vampire. Of course, also the angle is important, because if I would move this light more to the side, then these white catch lights in my eyes would disappear. But even though you don't notice them when you're looking at a video, if they would be gone, you would notice it because there would be something off. And that's it guys, I hope it all makes sense, but don't worry if it doesn't, because I also didn't get all of this when I heard it the first time more than 10 years ago. Just practice a lot, see what the light does, experiment, what do the different settings do, the different ratios, and slowly by doing you will understand what light does and you will be able to predict what light does. Slowly you'll understand how exposure, settings, and light ratios work, and that's really important. It's one of the most difficult things, but also one of the most important things you'll have to learn. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if your brain is also fried now. See you in the next one.